This is Living Healthy with Your Health Potential, where we explore your options for better health. Brought to you in association with The Woman in You.
Hi, welcome to Living Healthy. I'm your host, Sheryl Worthington-Turgeon. Ever wonder what it's like beyond this physical existence? For renowned neurosurgeon Eben Alexander, it's no longer a mystery. In this episode of Living Healthy, we're back again with Dr. Alexander, author of Proof of Heaven, in the second of our two-part series as we delve a little deeper on his views on life, science, and spirituality, and how they changed dramatically after his near-death experience. This episode was recorded when Dr. Alexander was speaking at the Marion Institute's Connecting for Change event in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
And I just can't wait to get into, on the basis of your book, Proof of Heaven, where you had the near-death experience, where that has led, and especially how it affects your views on cosmology, medicine, science, and how you're affecting others that are professionals in those fields.
Right. Well, it's been absolutely transformational in every sense of the word. And I think so much of it hinges on the fact that everything I ever thought I knew about brain, mind, consciousness, and the nature of existence was completely thrown up in the air and had to be reanalyzed and brought into a much cleaner form to explain what happened to me deep in coma. And it's very much about the mind-body discussion or mind-body debate that is actually a discussion that's been going on for 26 centuries. So you'd think sooner or later we might be getting close to some kind of a resolution. I think we are getting closer to an understanding of it. And very much my journey showed me clearly the power of knowing that consciousness is not created by the brain. And that is what then starts leading into deeper and deeper levels of understanding about all of this and about the nature of reality and existence. And to me, it's an ongoing journey that I am certain I will never completely understand in this lifetime, and that's fine. This learning is something that we all do as this process that continues in multiple incarnations to richer and richer knowing.
And how has your understanding of the nature of existence shifted since your experience?
I would say the most fundamental change involves the way that I saw pure scientific materialism at the core of all that is. That the idea that if we simply understand everything about electrons, quarks, protons, neutrons, atoms, molecules, cells of the brain, all of material reality, then we can explain everything that is. And in fact, what my journey showed me very clearly is that that is false. That in fact, the consciousness, soul, spirit, is the thing that exists and that then manifests all the rest of this. And that gets into what is called the hard problem of consciousness, which simply stated is that no one on earth can give you the first sentence that might explain how the physical brain gives rise to consciousness. And it also has to do with the enigma of the interpretation of quantum mechanics and the results of quantum mechanical experiments that drove the founding fathers into mysticism, basically saying consciousness paints reality, and they really had no way how to understand that at a deeper level. And physics has shown us that, 100 years later, in the realm of physical materialism and scientific materialism, they still have absolutely no way to interpret that. And it's because they refuse to acknowledge that consciousness itself, that soul, spirit, is the thing that is. Absolutely more concrete and real than anything in this material realm. And that is the part that I came to realize through my coma journey. And a lot of the scientific community is on board with this. They're moving forward with it deeply. But of course, it's bad news for those who are addicted to pure scientific materialism because you know, in this world of publish and perish, those people are so tempted to say, I've got a theory of everything. I almost have a theory of everything. And now all of a sudden to find out that all of that hard-earned knowledge of theirs is pre-kindergarten level must be very disappointing. And it is too bad if you had hopes for a quick fix and a theory of everything that would let all of humanity take the day off and go to the beach for the next 10 million years, as if you could really, human brain and mind could understand everything. No, absolutely not.
Is it really just the existence of our consciousness within this realm, within the body, that limits our understanding?
It's that illusion that that is the reality. It's the illusion that the brain creates consciousness. And in fact, I know I mentioned in an earlier segment about that beautiful book, Irreducible Mind Toward a Psychology for the 21st Century. I cannot emphasize enough how important that book is. 800 pages of very hardcore, well-researched scientific data analysis that shows that non-local consciousness is absolutely real. Get used to it. Get used to the idea that reincarnation, past life memories in children. You know, Carl Sagan, a very scientific mind, a skeptical mind, admitted that one of the aspects of kind of psi or parapsychological knowledge that, as he labeled it, past life memories in children. The evidence is undeniable, absolutely, you know, established in scientific basis. Now, truth be told, I must admit, I never paid attention to the reincarnation literature before my coma, because I was a scientific materialist, a neuroscientist who believed brain creates consciousness. So I thought, obviously, that stuff is just woo-woo illusion. Forget about it. It can't happen. I prejudged it. And I would say that similarly, you know, pseudo-scientific, pseudo-skeptics like I was, who were unwilling to look at the data, are willfully ignorant. And they will be forever trapped in their ignorance. You know, it's not my mission to try and push them in the right direction. My father used to say, you cannot push a rope. And this is all about attraction and about coming up with truth, things that are close enough to an understanding of reality and the nature of existence that attracts scientists and skeptics and philosophers, and attracts other souls that are on this journey of trying to get deeper into truth and the nature of our existence, attracting them towards something that to me is very appealing and very attractive. That's why I wrote the book Proof of Heaven, mainly for the skeptic, mainly for the open-minded skeptic.
And you're writing another book now, correct?
I'm working on additional books, and it's important to point out that Proof of Heaven is 1/3 of the manuscript that I had in hand when I went to Simon & Schuster back in January 2012.
And how has the scientific community received your insights?
I would say a lot of the scientific community is on board with knowing exactly this. I'm being asked to give talks at various medical groups, and gave a talk a few weeks ago at the American College of Surgeons at their annual foundation meeting, talk at the Texas Surgical Society, Tulane Medical Center, University of Virginia. Other places have invited me. And it's because the medical profession at large is waking up to this. I mean, nurses, I would say, have known this forever. You know, ICU nurses, hospice nurses, ER nurses, they've seen way too much evidence. They're often there when a physical body dies, and they realize it's not simply the end, you know, that's it. They see evidence that soul lives on, that soul is actually much grander, freed up from the physical body. And a lot of nurses see this so much, and doctors too. I can speak for myself as a doctor with conventional training. I was a little slow on the uptake, and I would see similar evidence, and yet I kept clinging to my little simple model of brain creates mind, thinking, well, it somehow has to fit into that model. And that's why I think I needed an extra special thumping. And I got that in the form of severe bacterial meningitis that absolutely should have killed me. And that's where some of my critics out there, especially kind of in the scientific world, although the ones who have weighed in there who have MD or PhD and have made any comment about my journey saying it had to be a hallucination or a dream, it's not clear to me they read my book. I can't believe it sailed that far over their head, so I just have to assume they couldn't have even read the book. And they're just making these assumptions out of that willful ignorance that I talked about earlier. But a lot of the scientific community gets this in a big way. And I would say it's basically the death knell for that pure materialism that says it's all just electrons, protons, quarks, atoms, molecules, cells of the brain, and that's all of reality. That in fact that very simplistic thinking is going down. I would say in a few years that'll be in the same category as, oh, the earth is flat. Oh, the sun goes around the earth. Oh, the brain creates consciousness. Oh, it's just birth to death and nothing more. All that thinking is going down.
So where does this thinking lead us? What do you envision?
I think it is a tremendous clarion call for humanity. It's a wake-up, and I would say that it actually is predictable. If you look back over thousands of years of humanity and of our understanding of the nature of our existence in the universe, a lot of this is very ancient wisdom about eternity of soul and spirit and how that's at the core of all that is. But I see now as a consolidation of spirituality and science that it is a tremendous opportunity for awakening. It has to do with questioning everything that we ever thought we knew about the nature of space and time, and that past and future are what they appear to be. And again, that's where materialist science is taking us, is to question deeply all those things that we assume about our day-to-day world and living in this kind of middle range that humans live in. Not way down in the subatomic and tiny, and not way up in the giant cosmological kind of Big Bang and beyond, but living in this middle range. We have this illusion of causality that is very much put together by consciousness, dumbed down on this side of the veil. And that includes the nature of space and time.
Tell me more about the nature of space and time from your perspective, because I'm wondering, how do we escape from the constructs that we've known all our lives?
Well, I would say that, for one thing, near-death experiences bring front and center notions of time flow in this realm are not the absolute and concrete reality that they appear to be. And that's why I often make the distinction. You need to realize, and this is something brought up many, many times by those who journey in near-death experiences, and certainly other spiritually transformative experiences, that the time flow in that realm, causality in that higher realm of our eternal spiritual souls. And this is especially important when you know about near-death experiences, deathbed visitation, after-death communication, reincarnation, past life memories. All these things kind of go into a knowing of a deeper time, what I call deep time, which is actually the string of causality in that higher realm. And it completely trumps any kind of notion of time flow in this realm as being the arbiter of all of experience. And so, for example, in my book, there's an example of terminal lucidity, where a friend of mine who was the head of one of the top academic neurosurgical programs on earth was present when his own father, physical body, was dying at the end of a long illness that involved dementia for several years. And my friend, very knowing in neuroscience and modern thinking of brain, mind, and consciousness, was fully aware of his father encountering the soul of his own mother. That would be the grandmother of my friend who was at the bedside, who had passed over 65 years earlier. And that father had been with her when she passed over, and never really talked about her during his life. But now, here her soul was appearing, and my friend was absolutely certain of it by the behavior of the father, that the soul was there to welcome him over. Now, I promise you that grandmother soul had not been watching the clock for 65 years, waiting for him to cross over. In that realm, time flow is completely different. There's a causality that is much higher, much more primary, that drives all of this. It's important to understand that what we see as a time flow in this realm is very much an illusion. In the materialist scientific world is kind of front and center in trying to tell us that, trying to understand it in a deeper fashion. The example I often give, there were two conferences in San Diego, one in 2006, one in 2011, hosted by Daniel Sheehan. One of them was entitled, I think, The Frontiers of Time, and then a more recent one about retrocausality. And they were deeply into some of the mysteries of quantum mechanics and how we know what we know and what can we truly say about past and future. And the implications from these two conferences hosted by the American Institute of Physics have everything to do with recognizing that what we would like to think of as past and future are not what they appear to be, that our consciousness dumbed down on this side of the veil kind of assembles this pattern of causality, even though there is not the deep underlying causality in the reality. That's why, for example, in both quantum mechanics and special, or in relativity, which are our two main models of workings of the natural world, to say there's A then B as an absolute is false. It depends on how you set things up, but it can be A then B, B then A. Causality is something that our own consciousness kind of lays over the top in trying to make sense of it all. But we get into deep mystery when we try and say that that is part of the underlying fabric of physical reality. And that's what these American Institute of Physics conferences zeroed in on. And specifically, for example, they're within the world of quantum mechanics and that whole discussion between Einstein and Bohr and trying to understand entanglement. How can subatomic particles be entangled in such a fashion that they can be halfway across a galaxy from each other, and if you make a measurement in one, it instantly alters the other one? Right. How can that be? Well, they're calling into question the very nature of what we know of as space and time. And in fact, in that discussion, Einstein had put out a paper in the mid-1930s, widely referred to as the EPR paper, Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen, that put out there that those quantum mechanical observations could potentially be explained by something called hidden variables. That is, that there was something that we couldn't really measure that was carried in those particles that allowed them to manifest that result to the measurement, even though they were separated, by thousands or millions of light years. And then there was an Irish physicist in the mid-60s, John Bell, who came up with a way of kind of a proposal for how you could assess that. And those experiments were done in the 80s and 90s in more and more refined fashion to show that, in fact, Einstein, who called it spooky action at a distance, he always had trouble with entanglement, that in fact Einstein was wrong. There were no hidden variables, that in fact spooky action at a distance is the rule. And so the conclusion from that, and people who are interested can look up the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment as kind of a source and the debate that goes around that. But it will call into question everything you ever thought you knew about past and future, especially past being written in stone. And that is an important part of where kind of material science helps us to get to that next level. But that's why I often say that science and spirituality actually strengthen each other. But to try and separate them out and pretend that you're either one or the other, therein lies a lot of the confusion.
And you can't really go further under those suppositions. I'm wondering, in quantum mechanics, when they talk about the observer actually affecting the outcome, and if you look at consciousness manifesting in our world, there's so much popular literature upon manifestation, and law of attraction and all of that. How do you view observation actually affecting the outcome of materialism?
Well, I think that's really at the heart of the question. It's something known in quantum mechanics as the measurement problem. Has to do with the fact that it seems that everything in the subatomic world is made of clouds of probabilities, but that to say that there's an actual underlying specific reality is misleading. That it actually takes the conscious observation and measurement that precipitates out a certain reality from that cloud of probabilities. And that's where the phenomenon of superposition and entanglement are so kind of mystifying, because they tell us that that's absolutely at the core of all that exists, and tell us that this is not an issue of saying, well, we simply cannot know enough, that that's a limitation of our measurement and our knowing. It's a fundamental property of the makeup of the universe.
Okay.
And that is a crucial part of understanding this. And of course, in the physics world, in the many interpretations of quantum mechanics, and it's not as if physicists have converged on one interpretation that then they all go, okay, now I get it, that all makes sense, let's move on. That has not happened. In fact, one of the most popular interpretations after a century of musing over this in the physics community is something called the many worlds interpretation, which is basically that every possible outcome of every subatomic measurement occurs, but each one leads into a separate universe. And I hope people out there can use their imagination to realize how non-parsimonious an explanation that is. All done to avoid saying that consciousness plays any role. And of course, they don't even get into, well, how does the mind then negotiate a certain pattern of following all these unfolding infinite universes and determining one set of, kind of reality. And I think that's where kind of my newer way of viewing this, which, is certainly not my idea, it's simply what I came to as making the most sense after my near-death experience, is realizing that soul, spirit, consciousness absolutely is the thing at the core of all of it. And that is what then generates what comes out of it all. And if we try and trap it in this purely materialistic mindset, that's what looks like this mystery at the very fundamental structure of the subatomic world that seems to be so nebulous. God playing dice with the universe, as Einstein used to say. And it's because they insist on that purely materialistic explanation, that materialistic determinism. And yet by flipping it around and realizing the fundamental role of consciousness, soul, spirit, and there is plenty of evidence out there for that. And again, I would steer the scientists, the book Irreducible Mind, also that beautiful book by Pim van Lommel, Consciousness Beyond Life. There's plenty of evidence out there that consciousness is a far deeper mystery, that it's not created by the brain. Consciousness is the thing that exists at the core. And I would say the better model is not brain creates consciousness, but the brain is a reducing valve, a filter that kind of dumbs down that consciousness that exists, lets in this little trickle that gives us this little illusion of the here and now. And it makes good sense from a Darwinian survival standpoint, just because that trickle of consciousness is what we need in trying to survive, as a being in this world. Now, of course, the good news is humanity now has hopefully, by and large, moved beyond, either being predator or prey, finding food without becoming food. We've moved beyond that, and that's why we can use meditation and other ways of getting deep into our consciousness to explore it and transcend some of those false boundaries of self and that kind of illusory nature, and get unstuck from space and time in a way that we can come to a much richer understanding of the true nature of our existence.
What an explosion of existence we have coming.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, to me, this awakening that I think is coming on this world will be the greatest enlightenment humanity has seen in our recorded history. And I believe it is all here for a reason. It has to do with the fact that it's no longer a question of whether or not we want to let status quo continue. This pure scientific materialism, completely unbridled science and technology that has no wisp of human spirit and of the much grander divine spirit guiding it. We no longer have the option to simply let that unfold as it will. And so in a sense, that's why I see that kind of human destiny and where we are now, looking over thousands of years of humanity and our destiny, says that, of course, we're right at this juncture that involves a grand awakening to knowing that we are all one, that consciousness is one, that it's not just about humanity, not just about all life on Earth, but far beyond the bounds of this planet in our understanding, and also realizing that that time flow that we seem to be so trapped in our kind of scientific materialist view and in our common day-to-day view, that is misleading. And that in fact we have a far richer experience. And again, as I've said, you don't have to die or almost die to get this. Meditation, centering prayer, that's why I do the work with sacred acoustics, to offer up tools for deep meditation to help people get deeply into a richer understanding of this, so get in touch with that universal consciousness.
Well, the work that you are doing is phenomenal, Dr. Alexander, and I feel that you're really contributing to the ascension of humanity, really.
Well, thank you. I think, I believe if my book had come out 10 or 15 years ago, it would have hit a wall. Yeah. And I say that because I want to offer up tremendous gratitude to brilliant thinkers, thought leaders, authors, and this is not just over the last few decades, and there are many in the last few decades who have helped take this world up to the next level. I think it just allows my book to come in as a catalyst to help take us even further. And certainly there will be others like me, other kind of cogs in this great machine that will help us go to the next level. I love to quote Nikola Tesla, who I think is very much kind of undervalued by some scientific historians, a brilliant, brilliant thinker. And Tesla said that when science begins to investigate non-physical phenomena of soul, spirit, consciousness, mind, and go deeply into our spiritual nature and fully comprehend the power of consciousness and understand that deep mystery, in the first decade, science will achieve more than all of its previous history. And I think we're getting very close to that decade.
Fantastic. And again, I thank you for joining us. We're out of time, but what a wonderful way to close this show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a real joy being here.
For more information on Dr. Alexander, you can visit his website at lifebeyonddeath.net. For more information on the Marian Institute, you can visit them on the web at marianinstitute.org. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Sheryl Worthington Turgeon. See you next time on Living Healthy.